Hey everybody, it's Julie from A Beautiful Horizon, and today I am doing a collab with my super sweet friend Deanna from Taming the Frizz. We're talking about books that we have been reading, and for this video I'm going to talk about the books that I read in June, and then in the future I'll make a video about the books that I'm reading this month in July. So, just subscribe. If you aren't subscribed yet, go ahead and click the button. If it's red, that means you're not subscribed, and then you can see that video when it comes out. So the first book that I read was Platform by Michael Hyatt, and basically it's just talking about like a website and Twitter and all kinds of like different social media things. And being able to share whatever it is that you're passionate about with other people and serving your audience and all that sort of thing. I thought it was a really great book, very practical, a lot of things that you could do to improve your website or your platform, obviously. And then I read his book, Your Best Year Ever, and I thought it was good. I had already heard him do a bunch of interviews about the book, so some of the stories I had heard in the interviews, and it seemed like there was a lot of promotion of his course, Your Best Year Ever, and so I liked Platform better because I felt like it was more like practical, like things you can do right now, and I thought that Your Best Year Ever was good in that it did have a few tips, but I feel like maybe taking the course would be, more of the practical application aspect of it. But I did think one tip that he said was really helpful, and he was saying how if you want a habit, you have to have like a trigger to help you form that habit or like make that habit happen in your life. And so he was saying things like if he wanted to leave the office at 5 o'clock every evening, he would program his lights to turn off at 5 o'clock. So that would like make him realize, oh, it's 5 o'clock, lights are off, I gotta go. And then he didn't want to do work on the weekend, and so he started leaving his laptop at work. So he couldn't do work on the weekend. And so it's just like all these little things that he was doing that was making it easier, that were making it easier for him to actually accomplish his goal, because it was like the trigger to the habit, to the goal, instead of just trying to do the goal but having to like work really hard to be able to do it that way. So there was another thing where he wanted to go on a date with his wife every, I don't know, Thursday or Friday, and so he asked his assistant to plan a date for them every Friday and then just let him know what restaurant and what time or whatever. Maybe it was a specific time every week, but it was just kind of automating things, and that just totally spoke to me. I love automating things. I love Walmart grocery pickup. I talk about that all the time. I love, let's see, Is Your Standard. I pick up, their co-op order every month, and it's just really easy because I can kind of plan ahead and then pick it up all at once and not have to make those decisions, there on the spot. I can make the decision beforehand and then just pick it up later. I love apps where they have like reminders that pop up all the time, like my Bible app, that sort of thing. So that book just really spoke to me with some more ideas for things that you could do to help you accomplish your habits that get you towards your goal. So I thought that point was really good, but it was kind of later in the book. Permission Marketing by Seth Godin. I don't know. I guess it was just like communicating with your audience and finding out what they need and then supplying that need. I thought that was fine. Wasn't like my favorite book ever. I'm kind of going with like the business books first, and then I'll get to like the more personal books. Crush It, Gary Vaynerchuk. Basically like a bunch of stories of other people, which is fine, but there wasn't a whole lot of like practical application of the things that I'm looking to do. So to me, I don't really need the motivation. I'm already motivated to like be an entrepreneur. I just kind of need like the practical tools. And I thought that Platform was a really good book for that. The Crush It book was fine, but it was more of like getting inspired and believing that you can be an entrepreneur or you can start a business around your passion. I already believe that. So if you already believe that, you might not like need that book. But if you kind of have a hard time believing that you could create a business around your passion, then it would be a great book for you. His Needs, Her Needs, by Willard F. Harley Jr. I thought it was an interesting book. It's about marriage, and I thought some of the things in it were good. He said something about having like 15 hours a week of like quality like FaceTime with your spouse, and I had a hard time kind of wrapping my mind around that. It might be like my season of life. But 15 hours a week seems like a really long time. I mean, like an hour a day seems like, manageable. But 15 hours a week, I don't know. It just seemed like a big number to me, which maybe it isn't. I don't know what y'all would think about that. But I thought there were some good aspects of it. But I actually like the book Love and Respect a lot. It's been a while since I've read that book, but I thought that book was really good at the time that I did read it. So I'll link all these books in the description box, as well as Deanna's video for sure. So you can check them out if you want to. 7 by Jen Hatmaker. I thought it was funny and engaging. I thought it was just like interesting, her sense of humor. I don't necessarily agree with her on everything. And I think there's a lot of like guilt associated with things sometimes in these sorts of books. 7 was her story of going through, I believe it was 7 months and 7 categories. So it was like for 1 month she only ate 7 foods. For another month, she only had like 7 items of clothing. For another month, I think she tried doing just 1 car at one point, and then they decided not to do that. There were just several different like areas of things that she went through. So like food, clothing, I don't know. There's a lot of different things that she went through. But just like it was a lot about like minimalism and also generosity. So parts of it I thought were good. Parts of it I thought just kind of gets into like a guilt thing. And I don't think that's really what she intended. I think she kind of actually addresses that a little bit. But I do think it's important to care for others and stuff and be a giving person and that sort of thing. But I think it's also, good when you feel God's blessing on your life. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know. So it's a very interesting conversation that I love to have with some people. Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. I thought it was a good book. Some of these books, I wonder if I would like it more if I had read it instead of hearing it. I feel like you're able to just kind of digest things better when you can look over them a couple of times. Some of these lies, they're each like a lie that she believed and why she doesn't believe them now and how she got to the point where she didn't believe them anymore. Some of it was about comparison, some of it was about not feeling good enough, that sort of thing. And some of it was relatable, and other parts of it were more like her life story, and other parts of it I felt like I didn't really identify with, or didn't feel like I struggled much with that specific thing. And I've heard a couple of people say that some of the things, like, they just didn't really feel like that was something that they struggled with, so it didn't feel maybe as, I don't know, like amazing or eye-opening or something to them as to some other people who were like really passionate about the message that was in the book and feeling like it really met a need in them. And that's not to say that the people who didn't feel that necessarily don't struggle, because they do, but they maybe felt like their struggles were a bit different than what was addressed in the book. And so I kind of fall more into that camp where I thought it was good, and I feel like for the people who maybe struggle with certain things, it could be really helpful and everything. But although parts of it, yes, like I could identify with parts of it, but maybe not the majority of it as maybe some people could. And it's funny because everybody who says like is also feeling like it feels weird to say that. Like maybe I don't struggle the same as somebody else. But then Present Over Perfect was kind of more maybe my camp. Like, it's funny because I kind of felt, I think I said this before on Instagram, that they kind of felt like bookends to each other. Like Girl Wash Your Face was more like you can go, go, go. And then Present Over Perfect was more like you don't have to and you can slow down. And so I feel like that was more of my side of the equation. was just being able to slow down and not have to do things all the time and like prove yourself and strive and all that sort of thing. Whereas Girl Wash Your Face was more like, you can do this and I believe in you. Whereas President Over Perfect was more like, you don't have to and you can slow down. And yet it was a lot of her personal story, which then is kind of reads more like a novel almost than like a self-help book. So part of it was just very raw and real, and both of those books were very just like their story right out there for everyone to read. And while I feel like that's really like brave and something good, it was also sort of like, maybe I don't feel that same way, but parts of it I could identify with. So if that makes sense, it's like part like their personal story and then part how they overcame. So I think it's interesting. It's very, very like vulnerable of someone to just put out there like everything that they're feeling. And the thing that I was thinking was that that's kind of what people do on YouTube a lot of the time, but you tend to feel like you've been following them for a really long time, so you kind of almost feel like you know them. Whereas like an author, maybe that's the first time you picked up their book and they're pouring their hearts out, and you're like, wow, I feel like if I had been reading for a while, like it would be even more, I would connect even more. If that makes sense. I don't know if any of this makes sense, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, wow, that's really vulnerable of you, I guess. And it's amazing. Zero Waste Home by Bea Johnson gave me some tips for having less paper clutter. I am not zero waste or anywhere close to it. I go through ups and downs of trying to be. But she did mention opt out pre-screen to opt out of like credit card junk mail that you get, and so that's been helpful. I opted out of that and have been getting a lot less junk mail, so that's cool. I know there's other ones that I can do, and that's another one that's sort of like a checklist. So if you're really into that, I would suggest getting the book versus the audio version, which is what I've been doing with most of these, or all of these actually, because I use the Hoopla app, which works with your library. You get 8 free books a month to listen to. I've also tried the Libby app for a couple of them that I couldn't get through the other one, through Hoopla. Money Making Mom by Crystal Payne was a bunch of ideas, kind of like the Gary Vaynerchuk book, where it was like ideas of how to take your passion and create something around it, and just like more like a bunch of ideas of ways that you can take an idea and somehow make it your brand, something that you're passionate about, make it your brand. And so if you don't know what you're good at, or you don't know like what you want to make a business around, that will give you some ideas maybe. So it wasn't necessarily the practical aspect of like creating a business, but more of realizing that you can take your passion and build a career around it as a brand if you have the patience and the perseverance and the passion to go for maybe years and years and years. Neither of them would say that it's like an overnight thing. It's not a quit your day job and do it. It's a build it on the side hustle and then eventually switch over. So it wasn't the practical part of it, but more of like the idea part of it. Desperate by Sarah May and Sally Clarkson was one of my favorites. These are actually, the next two also are my favorites. But Desperate was super awesome. Any stay-at-home mom needs to read this book, especially homeschool moms who have their kids with them all the time. It was basically a mom, basically in my season of life, where your kids are, her kids were 3 and up. So I think her kids were like 3, 5 or 6, and then like 9 or something, or 11 or something like that. And mine are 3, almost 5 and 9. And so she was talking about, she was like just now coming out of the season of just feeling like you're in the trenches of motherhood. And then Sally Clarkson had older grown up kids, who are in, you know, in college or married or whatever, and they were just kind of having conversations back and forth. Sarah May was talking about, you know, like the struggles that she was going through, and Sally was giving her some wisdom, and so I just thought it was really awesome, and I thought it was really helpful. So that was one of my favorites. My second favorite was called Poverty, Riches, and Wealth by Chris Valaton. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but I thought this was a really good book. I thought it was awesome how he was talking about the difference between being rich and being wealthy, and kind of maybe have that mindset of like buy versus building wealth and being able to invest in people, bringing value to people versus just trying to get their money. And just, you know, what you can do when you have the ability to do something for the kingdom of God or for others, or, you know, helping businesses grow, ways to encourage your employees to work for the business and be able to give them incentives and bless others. I just thought it was like really uplifting and great, especially after reading some books that were kind of like talking down on making money, sort of, and not to get anybody upset, but I thought it was a very like positive book without being too like, I don't know, money's not going to solve all your problems, but it can be a tool, and money can magnify what's already in your heart, kind of thing. So that was my second favorite. And then my third was Knowing God by J.I. Packer. I thought this was a really good book, kind of more like theological, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good, especially if you've been like in the church for a while. He mentions different things about Christians in the church, and some misconceptions about things, or just different ways to view things. And I don't know, I just thought it was really refreshing, and a couple things made me chuckle, and I just thought it was a really good book. So if you want just like a really smart but down-to-earth kind of book about God and Christianity and the church, I thought it was a really good book, and it's been given good reviews by a lot of people like Billy Graham, R.C. Sproul, other people. I don't know, it was a lot of big names that kind of endorsed the book. So that's my list. That is my list for the month of June. Those are the books that I read. Some I thought were great, some I thought were fine, and others I was kind of like meh about them. But that's where it is. I'll link all of them in the description box if you want to check them out. And I use the Hoopla app to listen to all of these books. I really appreciate the libraries that participate with the Hoopla app. If your library doesn't participate, check out libraries around you. You might be able to buy a library card to a library around you that actually does support the Hoopla app if yours does not. And you can listen to 8 books per month. Or you can check out the Libby app, but your library also is going to have to participate with Overdrive and Libby and all that. So I'm not sure exactly how Libby and Overdrive are connected, but somehow I'm listening through Libby, but it says Overdrive. Anyway, that is connected with Overdrive. So that's all the books that I read. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to check out Deanna's video. I will link it in the description box, and I will see you in my next video. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Like the video. I will see you then. Bye.